Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Now, this is a picture you've probably seen on the internet, especially on the Warhammer community stuff, quite a bit. But I want to talk about it because, like, for me, this is such an exciting thing to be happening in the Warhammer community. Now, you've probably all seen the information that Henry Cavill, aka Superman, or Geralt from The Witcher, if you've seen him in those shows, most notably probably one of the most famous people actively being out there saying, I play Warhammer, has announced that he's going to be working alongside Amazon in a sort of pre-deal thing. I'm not exactly too sure how to explain it. They've agreed with Games Workshop that there's going to be something happening. They want to do something. There's nothing sort of set in stone yet, but the terms and the agreement is there to get started, to start making this happen. And the idea is to have maybe a Warhammer cinematic universe, or one-off films and TV series or whatever. It's all still a little bit up in the air exactly what is going to happen, but what I want to do in this video is have a little bit of fun, because everyone's been talking about how excited they are for this, and we did a video talking about celebrities that are into Warhammer, and you've definitely seen a couple of the other ones get excited, Rahul Kohli and Shayna Baszler from WWE has been really excited about this, so I want to talk about 10 pitches I've got for Warhammer TV movies or series. These are 10 Warhammer 40k or Warhammer 30k ideas, Warhammer somewhere in between 40k, 30k as well, that I think would be really interesting stories to tell. Now, with these stories, generally I think, Space Marines have to be involved in it in some way. Not all stories that I'll probably suggest will be Space Marine orientated, but definitely think, that is probably a major part of what's going to happen. Space Marines will be in them, I think, to some degree. But let's get cracking on into it. And so, number one, I think this one is a little bit obvious. It definitely has, some appeal and likeness to other movies that have come out, and that is the Battle for Macragge, the First Tyrannic War. Now, it could be either part of this. I think a First Tyrannic War section is probably, as a TV series, while the Battle for Macragge could definitely show in one sort of movie. For me, I think an important part of the story of showing the Tyranids attacking the world is definitely showing that initial sort of part of the series with Inquisitor Cryptman going to Tyrann and discovering the issues with all those outer worlds out there and seeing, the Tyranid threat coming for the first time is definitely a part of the series I would really like to see. I think you could show that off in a movie and definitely sort of skip a lot of the different bits in between, the start of, Tyrann and skip between the attacks on Macragge and stuff. You could sort of cut a lot of that out if you wanted to make a singular movie. But I think being able to show Cryptman going through those first stages and the Tyranids eventually going to Macragge leads to a much bigger sort of series look, which could definitely have its own part to play. And I think, this is a major iconic moment in Warhammer history. Now, the only thing I have against the Battle of Macragge, and I think it goes against it, is it's not Aryan Dominus. It's not showing off Primaris Space Marines, which is, of course, the newer poster boys for Warhammer 40k, which I think is probably something they're going to look towards. And that'll be, a negative maybe against a few of the suggestions I have throughout the list, is maybe that as an issue. But it is still, a major battle. It's got that Starship Troopers vibe to it, obviously with Space Marines versus giant bug people. But yeah, definitely a cool thing that would be awesome to see on the big screen. Number 2, Eisenhorn. I think this is one of the few things that you could get away without having to need Space Marines as a major part in your series. Eisenhorn has this fantastic story and plot line that goes through many books. He's got, a well-established plot you can follow, going through all his different books and stuff like that. But with enough room to grow as well, because there's certainly parts within those books where there are gaps between the stories and stuff like that. You can have that creative freedom. I think, Inquisitors are still part of the Warhammer 40k universe enough that, he is an interesting character enough that he doesn't need to be a Space Marine to carry, and they really get to show the underbelly of the Warhammer worlds, and especially, the grim, dark aspect, maybe a little bit more than what Space Marines get to show in maybe, a heroic battle like the Battle for Macragge we've just talked about. That being said, I think this has its drawbacks. Once again, it doesn't have Space Marines as its main part, and I know there's some people that are going to go, ooh, Space Marines, or why do Space Marines have to be a part of this? We're going to look at this, I think, as someone new getting into the hobby. Space Marines are that focal point of Warhammer 40k, so it is important to see them represented in this, so when people come over to the game or the tabletop hobby side of painting and whatever, that they do see, you know, the things that are going to be pushed at them in the forefront. Number 3, Gaunt's Ghosts. And this, like Eisenhorn, I think Gaunt's Ghosts showing off, you know, a crack kill team of these various different warriors of the Tanith First and Only, is certainly a good story to tell. I think, you know, it does lack Space Marines in parts of it, which is obviously, you know, going to go against it in they're wanting to show. But I think, you know, like Commissars and the Imperial Guard, you know, these humans fighting off against the galaxy is going to make Gaunt's Ghost very relatable as a story. I think this is going to be probably one of the main cast of characters that would appeal to a wide variety of audiences that maybe Space Marines won't be quite relatable to. I think for me, this is definitely up there with probably one of the best pictures. I think this is even a better storyline to go on than, say, going with Eisenhorn, in all personal opinion, just because I think the wide variety of characters really doesn't make this quite interesting as a set. And also, Ibram Gaunt has, you know, like Eisenhorn, this massive storyline saga across many different books, which make him really relatable. Once again, though, like the stories before, this is an era in Dominus, so it does have its own issues. Number 4, Helsreach, the second War for Armageddon. Now, first of all, that title straight away would have people wondering, well, where's the first War for Armageddon? So that in itself maybe is an issue, but first of all, this has Space Marines in it. It also has one of the most iconic Space Marine chapters in the Black Templars. I think, you know, while they are a second founding chapter, I think the Black Templars have a lot going for them. They, you know, got their own unique look. They look very different. You know, they've got the whole knightly aspect, which can come off very popular. And, you know, led by a major character in Grimoldus in the storyline is really cool. But on top of that, if we go into a proper Second War for Armageddon story, we are going to see, you know, Imperial Guard in there as well. And indeed, the Adeptus Mechanicus with their giant Titan guns. And the giant war engines they bring out in the Second War, along with, you know, like I said, we've got the Imperial Guard in there with major characters, obviously, with the Commissar as well, Yarrick there, forever, may he rest in peace. But also Gaskell Thraka as a major orc character, which is really cool. So you're introducing, you know, 3 major characters to your storyline in Grimoldus, Gaskell Thraka, and Commissar Yarrick. So 3 really big characters within the narrative. Now, that obviously has its problems because obviously Yarrick is not around anymore, which is sad, I know, but both Gaskell and Grimoldus are still there, so definitely I think this has the potential for a really good series, or indeed a movie. You could definitely scratch this down just to the fight on Helsreach itself, and you've got a movie. Number 5, Dawn of Fire. Now, this certainly has a lot of appeal. First of all, Space Marines. It's got a major character in Rebuta Gilliman, a Primarch sitting in there. It's also current 40k timeline. You know, being era Indominus, I think, is a massive importance to them. I think they're going to want to show off modern 40k in the series, so I could see Dawn of Fire really being, you know, right up there with something they might actually bring to life in a series. It's got cool characters, though. I really like the Dawn of Fire series. I've only read the first book so far, but I found it quite enjoyable. I think it sets things up. I'm really enjoying currently reading the second book in the series. It's, you know, showing a lot. I think there's some cool characters, and of course we just saw that brand new white consoles model for the captain in the books as well, which is really cool. But I think for me, this is a really interesting sort of series that could come out. You've got a lot of different parts of the Imperium and lots of different enemies you can add into it. I think a lot can be done with the Dawn of Fire. Number 6, we're going to look at just a little bit before the Dawn of Fire. What about the Gathering Storm? This, I think, is a really good place to start as a first series for Warhammer 40k. Mainly because it's going to sort of move on from the old 40k timeline and sort of show you a beginning of a new timeline for 40k. It's resetting the universe in essence, which I think is a great place to start. You know, the Gathering Storm, having that little, you know, start reset, it introduces a lot of major players that will then be taking part and sort of, you know, pushing the narrative forward in the future stories. You're introducing Abaddon, you're introducing Gilliman, you're introducing Yvraine and the Eldari, you're introducing, you know, Chaos, the Imperium, and a bunch of different characters within that. Obviously, we've then got the Custodes coming out and the Sisters of Silence stories, all coming from that. I think There's a lot to do with the Gathering Storm. You know, you could even move on to other stories like the Defense of Baal and stuff like that against High Fleet Kraken, and tell all those stories as well that all sort of set the world up. I think, for me, this is probably one of the best places to start for a story, because it doesn't necessarily rely on you knowing too much about the Warhammer 40k universe, but you can sort of know a little bit and you'll know that history, but it doesn't require, because you can just go, cool, Guilliman is this ancient powerful leader they're trying to recover. That's all you need to know about him, really. And then Abaddon is this aged sort of agent of the evil chaos that betrayed Guilliman back in history. Cool, that's all you need to know. And the Eldari are, you know, these whimsical space elves that like, you know, controlling fate, and that's why they're helping the Imperium despite not being friends with them. I think this definitely offers a lot for a series, and would almost be the best place to start, because it adds in so much while, you know, allowing new people to get into the setting really easily. Number 7, the Damocles Golf Crusade, and I think this is a really interesting one to take a look at. Now, this definitely doesn't have, you know, maybe some of the big hitters, but it definitely has, you know, enough good characters. First of all, we do have, you know, Kasaro Khan and Cavill Shrike taking part in it together. So 2 major Space Marine captains, one of which we know becomes Chapter Master of the Raven Guard eventually as well. But also introduces a really interesting enemy that I think is a more relatable enemy in the tower. You know, they are more humanoid than some of the others. They're not quite as aloof as, say, the Eldari. But also, they show the Imperium in a bad light, because the Tau are, you know, this sort of more nicer society than the Imperium. So I think this is a good way to potentially show the Imperium, you know, while it is the humans, while it is humanity, it is this horrible version of it. And the Tau, you know, they're not perfect in their own way. They do their own bad things. You know, the whole mind control of the Vespid Queen and all that is its own sort of wrong. But, you know, I think this is a good way to potentially show that. But there's definitely a lot of good things. You can also introduce characters like Caedus Sikaris, who is a squad sergeant of the 8th Company of the Ultramarines at this point in time, which is really cool. So definitely a lot to sort of show over time in this. But I think this is another cool Space Marine story that has a lot to offer. Number 8, The Beast Arises. Now, obviously, when The Beast Arises came out, it was touted as, you know, the biggest Warhammer 40k fictional event since the Horus Heresy. And obviously, we've had, you know, bigger ones since then, in both Psychic Awakening and indeed, you know, The Gathering Storm, and now even Dawn of Fire is starting to take it out. But The Beast Arises definitely has, you know, its own cool story points. I think it introduces some really cool characters. It's set, you know, just after the Horus Heresy. It's still got, you know, some of the Primarchs in it. It's got the Death Watch getting founded. It really does have a lot to offer, I think, as a story. You know, it's maybe not the most well-received giant storyline they've ever done for 40k, but it definitely had its own place. And I think, you know, having orcs as an enemy, orcs are really fun. They're a cool sort of enemy to bring, especially 40k orcs are different than a lot of other universes orcs, which is nice. It's got Space Marines, but it's also got other factions in there as well, so this could certainly be something strong to lead with. Number 9, this is a more personal one for me, but the Age of Apostasy. Now, for those who maybe aren't as knowledgeable in 40k lore, this isn't one of, I guess, the big hitters, unless you're really involved in more 40k lore a little bit deeper. The Age of Apostasy is effectively where the Sisters of Battle were founded. This was Gaunt Van Dyer, a High Lord of Terror, who sort of, I guess, took over the Imperium. He had this coven of warrior nuns thinking, you know, he was sort of like some sort of savior of the world, and they followed him thinking he was speaking the will of the Emperor, and they were the original Sisters of Battle. Now, you had a force of Black Templars and Imperial Fists storming the palace at Terra. Yeah, that's right, storming the Imperial Palace to oust again Van Dyer, and it wasn't until one of these sisters got, you know, a vision from the Emperor that it sort of turns it all on its head, and she actually ends up slaying Van Dyer. And the Sisters of Battle are now forever on the penitence, hence why they're like these warrior nuns, always sort of involved in penitence, because their whole story started off from them being essentially, you know, betrayers of the Imperium, which is really cool. I think this is a really interesting story because it shows, you know, the Imperium at its core being corrupt and evil and, you know, nothing sort of being good. which is a really interesting sort of look. This, and I just love it. I think adding system battle would be a really cool thing. You know, once again, Black Templars, Imperial Fists, two really popular Space Marine chapters. The Imperial Fists are much more sort of generic looking Marines, but really cool nonetheless. And then you've got Black Templars, who are, you know, that knightly sort of faction, the Emperor's Champion sort of going up on the steps and fighting. All of that sort of stuff I think is really, really cool and interesting and can add a lot to a series or a movie about this. And number 10, I mean, I couldn't not suggest the Horus Heresy. Now, this certainly has its issues. It is a massive series, and this would be a massive undertaking to do, to cast correctly, to tell the story in its fullest. It does have books, you know, leading us through the series, telling us what everything is happening and stuff like that. But this would be such a monumental task, and, you know, I think the biggest issue with something like telling the Horus Heresy being, you know, a much larger story than, say, a saga of something like The Beast Arises or Dawn of Fire that are smaller, or indeed, you know, The Gathering Storm. With the Horus Heresy being such a large universe, having so many major characters, I think this has the issue to maybe get rushed if it gets too long. Something like what happened to Game of Thrones at the end, you know, where all these stories sort of either get forgotten, they get sort of pushed aside, they get sort of ended abruptly in ways that maybe aren't favourable. I think this definitely has a lot of issues going with Horus Heresy. I mean, it's the dream of all of us to see the Horus Heresy in a TV series, but this would certainly take a lot of work and a great deal of commitment. So while this may happen one day, I don't think this would ever be the first thing to happen. But boy, oh boy, if we saw, you know, a full series, you know, 20 series of Horus Heresy leading up to the final battle here that you can see pictured, it would be absolutely amazing. But with that said, let us know your pitches down below. Let us know if you liked any of our ideas. I mean, I'm still set on Age of Apostasy. I think that's an amazing story to tell. I think Gathering Storm, for me, is the perfect place to start. I think it sets everything up really well in a modern 40k universe. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And so that's the end of the video. We hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Sinful Gaming, we have a Discord server where we all chat on about Warhammer, wargaming, and other stuff in besides. You can find the link to that in the video's description. Also, there in the video's description, you will find links to our Patreon, YouTube members, Ko-fi and Teespring, the best ways to help support the channel. If you'd like to help support the channel either by grabbing some merch or donating via one of those sources, you can do so, and that would be greatly appreciated. It allows us to keep doing what we are doing. As a special thank you to all our Patreons and YouTube members, we're going to give you all a shout out. So thank you to our Patreons: Christian Weir, Soren, Kenny Lyle, Outer Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Q Dynamic, Anthony B, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cader, Bloobs, Benjamin Swallows, Red Martin, Kevin Bowman, and Iron Grinch. And to our YouTube members as well: Green Roots Gaming, Ronya, Lockloric, The Johnny84, David Ellsworth, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Ariane Edwards, Revenar, Pink Nico Fire, Robin Mankiller, Monty Tabletop Terrain, John Castle, Davis Weir, James South, and Dave Crozier. Special thanks lastly to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork you see on the channel. Thank you all for watching once again, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.